What? Daddy? You did tattoos, yeah.
Maya was defenceless. She was 2 years old and should have felt safe at home, learning, playing and having fun. But instead, she lived in constant fear of what Michael Daymond was going to do to her next.
Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a tiny child, just 2 years old, living in a home. One she should have felt safe in. What if over weeks, bruises began to appear, excuses were offered, red flags ignored, and ultimately that child died? What cracks in the system allowed this tragedy? In this video, we explore the lives of Michael Daymond and Dana Carr, the investigation that exposed the truth, and how each step reveals lessons we can all learn and teach. This is not crime entertainment. It's a careful, respectful inquiry into how a child died, how justice responded, and how prevention might be possible. Maya Chappell was born in March 2020, daughter of James Chappell. After Maya's birth, the relationship between her mother, Dana Carr, and James ended. By the summer of 2022, Dana Carr entered a short-lived but intense relationship with Michael Daymond, sometimes spelled Daymond/Draymond in media. They moved in together in August 2022 in Shotton Colliery, County Durham, bringing Maya with them. Michael, then in his mid-20s, became Maya's main caregiver while Dana went to work. At this point, there were no prior criminal convictions known for either of them. It was under this domestic arrangement that bruises began to be noticed. Before the fatal day, others in Maya's life began to see troubling signs. In late August 2022, when Maya stayed with her father, bruises were observed on her cheek, jaw, and inside her ear. The couple claimed she had fallen from a slide in a park, but experts later concluded bruising inside the ear and gripping marks did not align with such a fall. On September 5th, Michael called Dana at work, stating he had to grab Maya to prevent choking. The next day, Maya's face bore new marks, a cut on her nose and a lip injury. On several occasions, relatives and observers noticed bruising across Maya's torso. Her step-grandfather, Christopher Fellows, asked Dana about it and warned that others might call for help. She responded that Maya often banged her head or pinched herself. When bruising appeared in highly suspicious locations, like on Maya's pubic area, the defenses of self-infliction or bumping into things were no longer scientifically plausible. Experts would later testify that those injuries required force or contact with a hard surface. Attempts were made to remove Maya from nursery so staff would not notice. Dana sent messages that Maya was unwell. Meanwhile, Dana also told others she had maternity complications, or blamed Maya's grandmother, or claimed control over her phone was taken over by Michael. These shifting narratives would later be central to the prosecution's argument that Dana knew or should have known. Although relatives considered calling social services, in some cases they hesitated or delayed. For instance, when bruising was discovered and reported by family, the trial heard that Mrs. Shorten intended to call social services, but Maya died about 48 hours later. September 28, 2022 is the day that would seal Maya's fate. Earlier in the day, Michael had been grappling with financial and personal stressors, mounting drug debts and sudden suspension of his universal credit benefits. He made repeated calls and logged into benefit agency systems to resolve the matter. At around 2 p.m., it was confirmed that his benefits had been cut. Shortly afterward, he called Dana and claimed Maya had collapsed. Then he called 999 to report an emergency. Emergency responders arrived quickly, and Michael was coached by the call handler to perform CPR. Maya was rushed to hospital, but never regained consciousness. She died 2 days later with extensive brain trauma and internal injuries. Autopsy and expert evidence would later reveal not only severe brain damage consistent with the force of shaking, but multiple bruises across her body, internal bleeding, and injuries impossible to attribute to accidental causes. Investigators interpreted the pattern. a cascade of violence culminating in the fatal blow or shake, layered on top of prior abuse. In narrating such a case, it's essential to avoid speculation detached from evidence, but psychological insight helps us understand possible dynamics. Michael Daymond. The court and sentencing documents paint a portrait of someone who, in moments of extreme stress, collapsed into violence already cultivated across weeks. His defense claimed he never intended to kill Maya, but the jury was instructed that a finding of inflicting grievous bodily harm knowingly and dangerously would satisfy murder. He had no prior convictions, and his background was characterized in the pre-sentence report as relatively stable. But he carried drug debt and insecurity around finances, factors that may have exacerbated emotional volatility. What becomes psychologically salient is the escalation. Bruising over weeks, a pattern of controlling explanations, and a final outburst that overwhelmed reason. The repeated lies and shifting narratives suggest a propensity toward minimizing accountability and concealing behavior. On sentencing, the judge acknowledged there was no evidence of sadism or sexual motive, but emphasized the cruelty, the sustained pattern, and the deliberate targeting of vulnerable parts of Maya's body. The judge regarded the act on September 28 as a transformation, not an anomalous outburst.
Carr.
Dana's involvement is more complex and emotionally fraught. She was convicted of neglect and allowing the death of a child, not active violence. In mitigation, the judge recognized she did not herself commit physical harm, and noted she loved her daughter and was distraught. But the conviction rests on evidence that she knew or should have known Michael was harming Maya, yet failed to act. Her repeated lies to the father, relatives, nursery, and police were seen as efforts to conceal the abuse. The judge noted her emotional immaturity, dependency tendencies, and past relationship trauma, parents with alcohol problems, father violent, as shaping her vulnerabilities. Her denial that she sent incriminating messages, and her extreme defense claims, like claiming a secret pregnancy termination, were considered behavior inconsistent with remorse. In short, she may not have struck Maya, but the court concluded she played a role in permitting a lethal environment. The investigation moved swiftly and methodically. Durham police handled the case with what the sentencing judge later commended as professional diligence. At the home and hospital, forensic teams documented bruises, internal injuries, and prepared expert pathology reports. The constellation of injuries, including fresh bruises, internal bleeding, and old healed damage, painted a timeline of abuse. Multiple experts provided unanimous evidence about the severity of trauma and the forces required. Photographs taken by a concerned relative of bruises before the fatal day were submitted. Investigators also obtained phone records, messages, and logs of calls to the benefits agency, which showed Michael's repeated efforts to resolve his financial status. These records were crucial to reconstructing his state of mind and timeline of agitation. Relatives, especially Dana's stepfamily, gave key testimony about seeing bruising on Maya and hearing Michael's denials. "It wasn't me." One witness, Mrs. Shorten, said she intended to call social services after noticing a cheek bruise, but Maya died soon after. Michael's mother testified that bruising had been present, though she accepted Michael and Dana's explanations. Nursery staff testified that Maya had begun settling in, but then stopped attendance after Dana claimed illness. Witnesses also recounted calls Dana made to Michael, messages she sent from work, and her communications about Maya's health, showing a pattern of shifting narratives. At trial, multiple medical experts were called to explain how certain injuries could or could not occur accidentally. They challenged the defense's claims. For instance, the bruise on Maya's pubic region was found to be inconsistent with self-infliction or benign causes. DNA or forensic path was combined with timeline reconstruction via phone metadata, message logs, and records from welfare agencies to verify Michael's movements, stress points, and opportunities. Dana's defense was cross-examined on her phone messages, on claims of control by Michael, and on inconsistencies in her testimony. The court found some defense arguments implausible, especially regarding message control over phones. The trial took place at Teesside Crown Court, culminating in the jury's verdict in November 2023. Michael Daymond chose not to testify, relying on the defense protocol. The prosecution framed the case as a trajectory of escalating cruelty rather than a sudden irrational act. Dana, by contrast, argued she was ignorant of the abuse, trusted Michael, and was manipulated. She denied responsibility, but the prosecution showed, through her text messages and repeated lies, that she either knew or recklessly ignored the danger. Witnesses such as Mrs. Shorten, family members, nursery staff, and medical experts testified. The jury heard evidence of injuries, message logs, shifting narratives, and the behavior of both defendants. In October 2023, relatives testified they had planned to contact social services but did not get the chance. The trial heard the parents had warned of bruises and concerns prior to that final day. On November 10, 2023, the jury found Michael guilty of murder and Dana guilty of child cruelty by neglect and allowing the death of a child. The sentencing hearing was held in December 2023. The judge, Mr. Justice Bright, delivered detailed remarks. For Michael Daymond's murder charge, a life sentence is mandatory in UK law. The judge had to set a minimum term. The judge concluded that although Michael did not intend to kill in a premeditated sense, the degree of violence, the history, and the cruelty placed this case in a high category. He started from 15 years under statute guidance, elevated for aggravating features, and considered mitigation, lack of prior convictions, attempts at CPR, background factors. Eventually, the court imposed a minimum term of 20 years, minus days already spent in remand, 440 days. The judge also gave a concurrent 6-year sentence for child cruelty, though that did not affect the life term. Dana's sentencing addressed 2 overlapping convictions. The judge clarified only a single effective sentence would be imposed, on the more serious allowing death offense. The starting point for her culpability was 7 years 6 months. Aggravating factors included her repeated lies, failure to act, and concealment. Mitigating factors included her age, absence of prior convictions, and emotional trauma. She was sentenced to 9 years in prison, with credit for curfew time, 168 days. Under UK practice, she would likely be released after 2/3 of her sentence, with the remainder on license, i.e. conditional release in the community. The judge warned she must comply with license conditions or face recall to prison. The judge also commended Durham Police, Council, and forensic teams for diligent work. The case struck public attention, in part because of the seemingly preventable signs. Investigative journalism and commentary noted that Durham Police began additional training for staff to better spot child abuse indicators. In media coverage, this was viewed as a tragedy revealing gaps in vigilance in home settings. The fact that relatives nearly intervened but hesitated became a point often cited in commentary. The judge's remarks, especially about lies and concealment, emphasized that the court saw this as more than a bad moment. The pattern of cruelty and the targeting of vulnerable body parts were seen as especially disturbing. From a justice perspective, the sentences were among the harshest possible under law. But prevention is the central lesson. This is more than a crime story. It's a cautionary tale about the fragility of legal protections. Several issues deserve reflection. First, bruising in young children is never normal. Any unusual bruise, especially in hidden areas or repetitive patterns, warrants immediate professional evaluation. Second, be alert to shifting narratives and blaming the child, self-infliction claims, or unstable stories. Perpetrators frequently mask abuse with lies or plausible alternative explanations. Third, a third-party intervention is critical. Relatives, neighbors, Educators should not hesitate when suspicion arises. Reporting to social services or child protection agencies can bridge gaps. Finally, documentation is powerful. Photographs, notes on time, messages, or texts all help investigators reconstruct what occurred. In this case, early photos and message logs were pivotal evidence. We must face the uncomfortable truth. Maya may have been saved if more had acted sooner. We may not rewrite what happened, but we can commit to vigilance for other children. Each bruise may be a silent cry, each unanswered question a risk. Prevention is our responsibility. So as we close, I invite your reflection. If you see a sign, do not turn away. Speak up, document, report. A child's safety may depend on your courage. Thank you for watching. If you found this investigation meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps me keep producing responsible, educational content. And if you or someone you know is concerned about a child's safety, please reach out to local authorities or child protection services. Help can't wait.